Up already.
Yeah, just a quickie. Are you intending to record this?
Yeah, I just started there. Lacking
right.
organization.
Right, sorry, Matt.
No, it's always good that there's a guard here, because when the inmates run the asylum, just chaos ensues, and that's exactly what me and Reese are. We've been left unattended. There's no Claire, there's no Paddy. They will hopefully have fun when they see this. So we're going to talk about JSON. We're going to explain why it's kind of useful. We're going to go into some of the normal constructs of JSON, and we're going to go through some demos and some examples of like how you can kind of read it and how you can use it and the power that you get from it. So the first thing we're going to start off with is that I'm not a developer. So I'm going to use terms that I'm not super familiar with. If there's anything I get wrong and you're a developer or you know better than me, shout out, because the whole point of this is that we can all learn together. And I want to learn from you as much as you want to learn from me. So JSON. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Now, what that means is that it's a derivative of JavaScript. It's kind of devolved from JavaScript, but it's a way of notating data. And that's all it is. It's just a way for you to send data in a format that is readable by other people. So I'm very familiar with things like XML, especially if you've worked with Dynamics for a while. You may be used to things like fetch XML. XML being little tags, and in between the tags you have the data, and it's all structured in a simple way. JSON is like XML. It may look a little bit different, but it's not too dissimilar from it. So all it is just a way to visualize data and a way to understand that data. Now, why is it important, and why are we talking about it in the flow surgery? So it's important because it's a very standard way of notating data, and it is used across loads of APIs all around the world, including a lot of the ones that we get in things like Power Automate connectors for Dynamics, for probably SharePoint, for Microsoft Graph, basically everything. Microsoft will usually send data back to you in JSON format, meaning that that's how we kind of interpret it. So it's kind of powerful in terms of knowing what it is and then being able to use that to be able to see your data and structure your data. And what I'll go through is some examples in Power Automate to actually take your flow up a level and how you can really get at that data. So I'm going to share my screen for a second. And what we're going to do is a very interesting exercise of watch Matt try to code live. Or what was previously known as when everything fails in Car Crash. So I've got so this is VS Code. I'm using VS Code because you can save things as JSON and it'll give you nice IntelliSense and format things in a nice way for you. And as Keith Watling always says, code is the thing in between the squiggly brackets. So that's what we're going to do first. We're going to create some squiggly brackets. So we're going to open some braces, and then we're going to go through, we're going to write some JSON and the different types of data that you can get in JSON. So JSON works by what we call key value pairs. So there is a key and there is a value. So the key is kind of the name of something and the value is the data part of it. So I'm constantly going to refer back to things like Dynamics in this. So like a key could be first name, the value is Matt, and the key is last name, the value is Collins Jones. That's the sort of thing that you get here. So everything works in the same way. So all keys always start with double quotation marks, and we can say, okay, we want a string, and put that in between the double quotation marks, and we have colons that separate the key to the value, and then we can say this is text, and that's it. So the string is the key. So if I was trying to get this piece of data out of the JSON, I would say, right, I want whatever the string is, and the value that it would return is this is text. So very simple way of getting data. So that's a single thing. So you'll also hear things like objects and arrays. So an object, and again, not a dev, an object is kind of like a representation of a piece of data. So what I'm writing here would be an object. I'm sending an object to something. An array is a list of pieces of data. You can have arrays inside of objects. And we'll kind of show you how all that works as well. By the way, if anyone has questions, just ask along the way. Chime in, raise your hand, whatever. I can't see the chat at the moment, but Reese can pop in.
Yep, will do.
So this is just a string that we can have. I'll go through the data types. So the other data types is we can have numbers. So again, we open some double quotation marks. And then we can write 321. So you notice that I don't put that around I don't put double quotation marks around it. The reason I don't put double quotation marks around it is that it will understand numbers, and numbers will be represented without the double quotation marks. If I was to put double quotation marks around it, you see it changes red. That's because it knows it's now a string. So if you want to represent a number, you need to make sure you do it without the quotation marks, and it'll just represent it as a number. I hope that makes sense. And again, if you want to add a new line or a new new key value, it's just a comma to separate those things. Again, this is the reason why I'm using VS Code. It's going to give you a nice visualization of what's going on and where there's errors and things like that. We can also represent data as being null. And again, that changes to be a slightly different color. Null is its own sort of data type. It's represented as a different color, and again, it's perceived differently. So there are special commands in JSON, as with most other sort of programming languages or notations, where you may have certain things like this. So null, again, is its own representation. We also can represent booleans. So booleans being true or false. So again, I can type true in and see it kind of changes to that similar color of null. And then I can type false in, and again, it'll change that again. So again, true and false are represented, are their own little special constructs for booleans that will represent true or false data. Again, another thing that you kind of have to learn. We can also have arrays. So I mentioned arrays earlier. An array is like a list of data. So if you are wanting to list a contact in Dynamics, and then you also want to list all open opportunities via that contact as well, you may get that contact as that top part, and then everything under it might be an array of all those pieces of data. So trying to think of it like that. So an array can be part of an object or that piece of data, and also represented inside of here as well. So arrays, we could have an array of numbers, 1, 2, 3, something like that, and that'll just give us a list of numbers that we can have in there. We can also represent different pieces of data as well. So we could have, Matt, Reese, can't spell your name, Reese, Larry. It's okay, it's not like this is being recorded. And that would be representative of an array as well. So an array is just a list of data. So that's all good. That's all fine and everything. But what happens if we want to write something that's going to actually be useful for us? Because this is just a string. This is just, everything else. So let's represent some actual data. So what we'll do is we'll create some things. So we'll say, first, what do I want? I want flow surgery. And I've not put my double quotation marks. It's going to give me a red squiggly, and it's going to be all angry. And we're going to say the flow surgery is the May 2021. So that's saying, right, which flow surgery is it? Right, it's the May 2021 version. When I say subject, again, got my squigglies and I'm typing on camera, so it obviously means I type everything wrong. Subject is JSON. Cool. And we'll have is Matt dev yet? And we'll say that is false. Matt is not a dev yet. We'll say age, strictly age. And I'll say how long we're doing flow surgery for now, a year. So we'll say 1.
Jeez, yeah.
Right, okay. So that's my top level piece of data about flow surgery. But maybe we want to capture some other data about flow surgery as well. So we'll say attendees. And what we'll do is we will do that, and we'll create an array of attendees. So the array of attendees will be people that are here. So we've opened these square brackets or brackets here. And inside of here, we can put some curly brackets. So again, get some code out. That's squiggly because there's no comma there. That's why. So we'll create an array inside of here, and we'll say name, and we'll say Larry's here. We'll say occupation, occupation. And we'll say Larry is the landlord. And that will be a single piece of data here, and then we can do the same thing again, and we can say name, and we will say, and you see it's telling me I can use Larry in here, but we don't want to use Larry in here. We'll choose Reese. Reese's occupation, yeah, I want that, and we'll go Reese's occupation is butler. There we go. And we'll add one more in, and we'll say Paddy, because he's not here, but we still remember him. We'll go name. See, it's helping me a long way. So don't mess this. We'll go Paddy, and hitting all the wrong buttons, and then we'll go occupation. Then we'll go chief trouble. So this is now my JSON object. So my JSON object, when I send that or when I request it from a server or from a service endpoint or an API or whatever, is going to send back this object. It's trying to say, right, okay, there was a flow surgery. It was on this date. The subject was JSON. Matt's still not a dev yet. He needs to work on that. The flow surgery's age is 1, and these people were in attendance. So instantly, that's more beneficial than making 4 different requests. One for what the flow surgery is, and one for the first person that attended, one for the second person that attended, and one for the third person that attended. So it sends everything in that single payload that we can kind of understand like this. So that's all good.
Sorry,
So
one second there, Matt. Michael, you got your hand up there. Was that a question?
That's true, yeah, that's a question. And just to get this right, the value of the flow surgery would be a string, right?
sorry, sir. No.
Say that again, I'm just muting the... Okay, go ahead.
The value of flow surgery would be a string, right?
Yeah.
Like not a date, like a kind of a number object or something, but it's a string.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's all, thanks.
I don't think dates are representative in flow surgeries in JSON. I think it's still strings, but we'll find out.
There is a representation for dates, but it's an odd one because it's actually a numerical value. It's I forget exactly what it is, but you can convert a date to a number that's used that's understood in JSON. But yeah, dates are a pain.
Yeah.
And there's a great question that you've answered there, Reese, about how do you illustrate double quotes in strings? That is a good thing to cover. So along with Paddy and Reese and Larry today, we also have Dwayne, the Rock Johnson. Now, what you do is you put the quotation mark the wrong way around. Stop with all these things. So we've got a squiggly here, and right occupation is it doesn't matter about occupation. Okay. I'm really sad that Paddy's not here because he would love that joke. Right, okay, so
I'll enjoy it on his behalf.
So you're absolutely right. There are issues where because a string will be represented between two sets of double quotation marks, we have issues where if you have those double quotation marks in a string, it's going to cause an issue. So as we say, is it that way around or is it this way around? That way around. Cool. Yep. That's how we escape double quotation marks. So escaping is where you use special characters to make sure you don't disrupt kind of your string or break out of it. So we have Dwayne The Rock Johnson, and these little backslashes are a way that it doesn't interfere with the whole string. It'll still represent it like that. So that's kind of how you do that as well, which is a good tip to know. Right, this is all good, but let's learn some more. So we'll take this, we'll copy this, and we'll go over to Power Automate, my Power Platform Bay. Right, so what I'll do is I've got compose action here, and we'll stick our JSON object in here, which is all good. Then what we're going to do is we're going to parse it. Now, why are we parsing JSON? What does this do? So the reason you parse the JSON is because if I add another action in here, another compose in here, right? If I have this JSON, I can interact with any part of this JSON that I want to and get that data out. But at the moment, Power Automate doesn't know what that JSON is. It just knows that it's just some text. It doesn't know that it's JSON, so it doesn't pull out the dynamic data. So as we use Power Automate and we use that dynamic content that we have, what it's actually doing is it understands the JSON that's coming back or the metadata that's coming back, and it goes, right, okay, I will give you these things that you can then use later on in your flow, which is awesome because that's what we do. But if I don't parse it, all I have an option for is just the outputs of that first compose action, meaning that I will just get all of this again. And what I really want is I want to find out what the subject of this flow surgery is. So what we'll do is we'll move this up here and we'll parse the JSON. So it requires content, which is the input, and it requires a schema. So let's do this. So we'll copy our JSON out because we know what this is. And then we will hit content here and we'll use the output. So we're going to use whatever's in here and we'll hit generate from sample. This is my favorite thing, is generating from sample. What that means is you can take a sample payload of JSON, a sample object, a sample array, whack it into here. And what it'll do is it'll automatically write a schema for you based on that. So we're talking about schemas. So I've got this now. I'm going to copy this back out into here. Cool. And we'll save this as something.json. It should work. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, cool. So this is our schema. So what is a schema? A schema is a way to, it's like a blueprint for data. So you have your data that you know will be coming back, but maybe you need to anticipate what it is, so then you can use it later on. So as I said earlier, when we're using direct content inside of Power Automate, it knows what those things are, and therefore it will give you error messages and allow you to use them in certain ways. So for instance, it knows the flow surgery property of our JSON, and we know that the type is a string, meaning that if I try to do anything with it, like multiply it by something, it's going to go, what the hell are you talking about? I'm a string. I can't be multiplied by anything. Go convert me to a value if you want me to do that. Similarly, if we have like a Boolean, we're again not going to be able to do any text manipulation. We're not going to be able to do any number manipulation because it knows it's a Boolean. So what the schema does is it's a blueprint that PowerAutomate or any systems can then use to say, right, you're sending me some JSON. I'm expecting it in this format. If it's not in this format, I'm going to kick an error because I'm not expecting that. So it's using a lot of APIs, and it can be used in PowerAutomate so that you can understand what you are getting back. Similarly, as we go down to the attendees, so the attendees, we had an array. So the attendees here, it says it's of type array, and we have items. The items are objects. Those objects have properties that are name of type string and occupation of type string. So what does that mean? That means we're going to have a list of records. Those list of records are going to be items. Those items are going to be of type object. So again, representations of multiple pieces of data. And these are the things here. And we also have required name and occupation. Cool. Those are the that's interesting. I never realized it did that. Cool. Those are for this for these arrays. So switching back to PowerTape for a second. So I've got my JSON object here that I'm putting in my compose action one. I'm then parsing that JSON, and I've got my syntax here. I can then, if I go to my compose to action after that parse JSON step, I can now see I have more items in here. So I no longer just have that single output. I have all of these things which are representative of the pieces of JSON that I've got. So I've got the name, which is my name, so the name of flow surgery. I've got is a dev yet, the Boolean, I've got the age, and then I've also got things like the name and the occupation, and other things. So I have loads of cool stuff in here I can now use. So I can say, right, okay, what was the subject? Right, okay, use the subject. So wrong button. I hit save. I want to just test this first and show you that it pulls the data out. Manual test. Run the flow. Click done. And flow run successfully. Yay! So we can see it successfully parses the JSON from what we're passing in, and the output is JSON. So that's the subject from my flow surgery here. So we can see there, all good. Right, what if I want to look at an individual piece of data from that array that we've got? So if I want to look at all the things from that array, it's calling it item. Oops, no, item is the individual one, isn't it? I think body I wanted. Actually, no, that might work. Let's show you that anyway. Hit save and test. Run the flow. Right, okay, so it's put the applied to each around it because it knows that the input is going to be all of the items or all of those arrays from the attendees. So we can see the name of the first one, Larry. You can see Reese here, the butler. We can see Paddy, the chief troublemaker, and we can see Dwayne the Rock Johnson as well. The different, remove that for a second, remove that there and delete this. If I put body in here, it would send the whole body of the JSON to me. So just run this again, done. And we get the whole body of everything in here. And again, there's just different ways to interact with the different pieces of data. I think if I choose attendees, will it give me, so it knows attendees is a list because we've got a little list icon here. So I think if I do this, it'll put another applied to each around it, or it'll just send it. No, that's what I wanted in the first place. That was the first one that I wanted, was attendees. So this is just going to provide me back that array, which is a list of attendees. So it's not going to give me the top bit, it's just going to send me back a list of attendees from the bottom. And again, if we go back to our schema, that's because we know that these attendees are just going to be a list here. So that's why this is powerful, because we can pick and choose the part of the data that we want. And once we get it, we can then do certain things with it. And again, Power Automate and all of the Power Platform is going to understand these different data types. So that's cool. That's all good. Now, what about maybe using this in practice somewhere? So let's take a look at Dataverse. That's the word I couldn't think of because it's changed so many times. Dataverse. Let us list rows and let's list contacts. That's always nice and easy. List contacts, and I just want to list them all. And we'll just hit test. And I don't really care about the first few things being there. That's all good. Test, run the flow. Yeah, I know, I don't care. Just run it. Don't tell me about my performance. I know about my performance. How dare you tell me how to build my flows and that they're not performant? I know this. I accept my flaws and insecurities. Right, okay, cool. So maybe I should have actually put something in there because what it's done instead is it's chucked everything in here. It is not very nice. So let's go back and let's actually be nice to this. Right, okay. What do we want? Filter rows, and we'll go. Actually, where is my data? Let's have a look at my data for a second. And see what we could filter on. And while we're doing that, we'll open the fetch.xml toolbox because the fetch.xml builder in the XRM toolbox. Because maybe we just what I want is I want to see some JSON, because that's what we came here for today, is to see JSON and not see just a horrible mess of stuff.
Yeah, I know that you said you're not a developer, but do you ever use the Web API URLs in your browser to get the JSON directly?
No.
I love doing that. I can show that afterwards if you're interested.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would mind if I called it CDS, and I can still search for it on the CDS. My XRM toolbox doesn't really want to load today. I just don't really like while it's thinking about loading. Yeah, that's going to take a while as well. Because who in this day and age writes their own OData queries? Is
me?
What? I wonder if I just okay, now you're loading up 3 instances.
Oh wow.
Just I clicked too many times for my impatientness. Right, hold on. If I just say bring back 3, will you then be nice and just show me some JSON? Because I just want a little bit of JSON. I don't want a lot of JSON. I'm not greedy. I just want a little bit to show people. Maybe. Yeah, there we go. All right, cool. So this is JSON again. So what we have here is we have this top level object, and it has a status code. This is giving us some nice data about what's going on. It even says the content type is JSON. Hey, something you learn. So it's in between the squiggly brackets or the braces, which means it's code. And then we have this body here. Then the body has a bunch of data in it. If we scroll down, keep scrolling down, here we go. There is another piece of data here. And yeah, so we can see multiple pieces of data, and we have all of these fields as well. The fields are awesome because we can do stuff with the fields and see them, and we've got various things in here. So time zone rule version number is a number 0. Full name is a string because it's in between the 2 double quotation marks. Dot mail, do not mail, sorry, not dot mail, is a Boolean. It's set to false. So we can see the same things that I've kind of shown you when I wrote my own JSON, represented from something that I'm querying Dataverse and bringing it back. So we've got all these things, the OB string, I don't know why I have that in there, timing and stuff. So we have all this JSON, which is all good. And let me go and take a look at Hal Jordan's one of these. Cool. Right, so that's great. We can pull data back and it's going to show things. Come on. So it's looking at it. So this is one of the records that we pull back. Oh, there's a badger there. And we have all these fields and things. We can see stuff. Let me superhero. What do I want? Maybe gender. Right, we'll save that. Male. Now, what's great is that we can then use this data elsewhere. So if I add another compose step on underneath, compose, no, yeah, that's the right one. And then say, right, okay, I'll look at my fields. So again, the values, the one at the top, that is going to be a list. It's telling me that it's a list here, and those are the arrays. And we can go gender in here. As we do that, it's trying to hit an apply to each around it because it knows that the object that we're sending back has an array in there, and the array is going to make it loop through and do multiple things. So by putting gender in there, it's going, okay, it's an array, we're going to do it multiple times. So if I test that correctly, and hopefully I've chosen something that will work or not work, depending on how you look at it, and depending on what it does, I suppose. What I want to see is what the data is. So I come down here, apply to each, and I have one. Okay, that's interesting. I have a gender of 1. I have a gender of nothing here. And a gender of nothing at the end. But essentially that 1 is probably Hal Jordan. And well, we could have, what we do here is put first name, or full name, there we go. And then, yeah, full name, then space, then this, and we'll test that. And we go round and round again. Okay, so Hal Jordan, 1 is his gender. Well, 1 isn't his gender. His gender is male. So why does it represent it as 1? Well, it represents it as 1 because that is what the value is behind the scenes. If I do show option set values, and I choose gender, there we go, gender code, 1 is male, 1 is male, 2 is female. So it's pulling back that, but as we kind of look, there was no other option. There's a single option for gender. So if I look at the JSON again for gender, let me just do gender. Cool. So we have these two. We have gender code 1, and then we also have gender code at odata.community.display v1.formatted value, which is not super helpful. So it's represented as 2 things. It's represented as the label that we can now access via this formatted value, and we also have the code behind the scenes. But when we chose the dynamic content, it only gave us the 1 option. Now that's not super helpful. Just to clarify, if we go in here and we just search gender, we only have the 1 option. But I have the JSON. It's kind of like a He-Man moment. I have the power, I have the JSON, I have the payloads that it's sending me, therefore I can use it. So I'll come back in here into my last run, and I'm going to go into this list rows. I'm going to show the raw outputs. I'm going to copy and paste that, and click edit. And then we'll come in here and we'll parse JSON in here. And we'll say the output is that list rows, and we want, this is the bit where I'll get it wrong. We'll go body, probably, and we'll stick that in there. And then what we'll do is out of here, we'll have another compose action. And then we can, and as you see, because I've now parsed the JSON, I have so many more options because there's so much data that the out of the box stuff does not give you, because it doesn't understand the different things in there, or it just only wants to give you the one. So if I now type in gender, I should have two. I have that gender code, and I now have that gender code community display.v1 value there. Again, it's going to hit and apply tweets around it, which is absolutely fine. And we'll do this. And then what we'll do is we'll look for full name. No, not free name. Full name. That one. And we'll test this out. So we'll test manual, test, save and test.
It's cool. I've not seen that happen before. I've been neglecting my question duties. I saw that Andy has a hand up, so I thought it might be a good moment to see if Andy wants to ask his question.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was referring back to the schema where it had those required tags in there or key value pairs. Is that because when you automatically generated the schema, it saw that all of those items in the array had both of those values, so it assumed that they're required? Is that what that means? That they're required fields? And the JSON data is not valid if the required values are not provided. Is that what that means?
I think so.
I've not looked into it directly, but I believe that is the case. As in the schema is describing the payload that you're expecting, and the schema is there for the logic apps, the underlying technology of Power Automate to understand it. So you don't have to have the required designation. You could take that out. What it does mean is if you're going to use it for populating data in further actions, it won't let you save the flow if those fields don't have values.
Right, understood. Okay, so that because I've really recently been exposed to this in the project that I'm working in, and it's all been a little bit mysterious to me. So I'm sort of piecing it together from fragments because we've had to pick up some JSON from an Azure service bus and parse it into data, and so we asked them for a schema, and they said they didn't have one, so they just gave us lots of examples, and then we found that the different elements were missing from the for the same they basically they had a website that if it didn't have the information, it just didn't write that element into the JSON, so it was impossible to build a schema. Is that right? That was the challenge, that we couldn't actually build the schema because they kept on supplying us with different JSON every time. Would that be a fair assumption?
It is, yeah. I mean, a well-formed web API or any kind of API should provide the object fairly correctly. The one issue with JSON is that it is obviously JavaScript notation, so it's perfectly valid JSON to return an array of objects where each object has different properties. That is perfectly valid JavaScript and JSON. However, from the perspective of programming and schemas, that's a nightmare because you can't then parse that. So in that situation, you wouldn't be able to use a schema. I don't think you'd have to actually.
So what we could do is we could basically take several schemas, spot the missing elements in them, and glue them all together to make an overall schema. Or would that cause problems? Because
actually, I have been involved in similar sort of situation. I would suggest to ask whoever's populating the data to give you examples where every single value is populated, then you will be able to generate the schema.
Yeah, we have, and they say because they built it some time ago, they're going to have to. Yeah, I think we've sort of agreed they're going to have to go back to the drawing board and make sure that they provide either a proper schema for everything, or else they produce more consistent. But it looks like it's been put together by lots of different developers, and so the outputs from the different web processes are not consistent. But yeah, I'm still trying to understand it properly, and so this is a really useful session for me because I'm just trying to fill the gaps in. Yeah, but thanks a lot. Yeah, that's really quite helpful.
Good. While you were talking, I was frantically trying to figure out why my thing fails. That's all fine. It's one of those things as well, is that in my schema, where it is, in my schema here, I could always say that okay, I know that this is this is going to come back as a Boolean, but I could also specify that if it's not a Boolean, it could also be null. I can't remember which way around you need to do it. Whether it's bracket or inside here, null. Which would mean that if this is coming back as a Boolean, then it's fine. But it's also, if it's also coming back as a null value, as in it's not populated with data, that's also fine, and the schema will understand it and still be able to use it. But the worst thing is when you try and populate it and like you have 100+ fields, and the 100+ fields also can be null because maybe their data doesn't come back in the best way. That's like a nightmare because you then have to go update this on everything, and getting that schema right is the pain. So yeah, not super useful there. Right. Points for anyone that can figure out what I'm doing wrong here. I think it's not the right thing.
So was this the parse in the JSON?
I think it's because I just want the body bit. I don't want the rest of it. Yeah, or do I just want the value bit instead? Just parse this value bit instead of the rest.
Yeah, the value is the array of returned records. The body is actually the HTTP response. So that whole JSON you're looking at from the very top to bottom is the HTTP response itself from the web call. So it's just the value you care about.
I just want the value. So I wonder if I need to, I need to parse the whole thing, don't I? Or do I just need to parse from the body?
You can directly reference it.
Parse from the body.
Or maybe just select it and copy it to Visual Code, and it will be better to highlight it.
Yeah. I just wanted to get rid of whatever the curly brackets are at the bottom. And I want to do maybe just that one. Maybe that
one more.
One more bracket.
Yeah, because that square bracket at the bottom is the end of the array.
Okay, so but I don't want the end of the array. I just want the body bit.
What are you trying to do here? You're trying to get the formatted values.
Yeah, just in a different way. Because I was just kind of curious. Just you can, because
you're copying too many brackets, aren't you?
That's why I'm, well, that was the thing, is that because I'm including the top bit, I just want to include this bit, I suppose. So let's all out to Visual Basic, as you say. And then I just want to get rid of this top bit here, and just, if I can just parse the rest of it, I should be able to. And wrong one. And get rid of that one. I think it's broken now.
So what you want is so you do want the value and you want the array, so the whole array from that value, because what you're going to do is you're going to parse the JSON of the value response. So if you take that array with the square, so you need the square brackets because it's actually the square brackets you're parsing, because it's the array of 3 objects that you're looking to parse. So yeah, if you take from that all the way down to the bottom and add in that square bracket you just took out, you can use that as the schema. And then the thing that you're trying to parse. We'll get to that in a second.
Body.
It's not the body, it's actually the value you want to parse.
You sure?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Still doesn't like it. Which is when I put the value in.
Yeah, so if you take that, right, okay, so square bracket, what's the top? Yeah, you want to just take everything before that square bracket away. You want to leave that square bracket in.
Yeah, okay.
You don't need the value either.
No?
So you just need, just need to start with that square bracket, because that's what you're parsing.
Okay. See if that works. All right, let's just do this.
Yeah, it is a bit confusing, I find, with actions at times, because the value and body for outputs from actions can sometimes be exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Power Automate is it tries to be more clever than you got to be careful.
Yeah. And then we'll put full name here. Full name there. Test it. Well, if it doesn't work, we had fun trying. Yeah.
Yeah, that's you're looping around the body, which I think is from further up. So you don't want to be looping from the parse JSON 2.
Yeah. No, I do, because I want to show that data that's in.
Yeah, so in the apply to each, that body that you're currently using as the output, would just hover over the body text? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Parse JSON is not valid, just invalid JSON Steamer. All right, because I wrote null in here. Because I can't remember the best way to do it. That was my error. See if that works. There's definitely a way to like specify whether things are null in JSON. I was trying to remember off the top of my head. That way, done. It runs successfully. Yay! So if we look at the apply to each, it now has Haljon and Mel. So that is one way of doing it. It's not necessarily the best way to get that data out, because you can actually just write in that notation and get that value out, which saves you a parse JSON step. But what I wanted to show was you can take data in a format coming back. You can parse it if there is additional data in there that you're not getting access to as part of your dynamic content inside of Power Automate, and you can then use those as dynamic pieces of content later on. So where I said you can, so like option sets, for instance, are just a pain in the bum at the moment, because you have to write in that dot notation, which means you need to put in a specific workflow expression to get it, which is fine. You can do that, but it changes depending on if you're using a list, if you're using a get record. So the easiest kind of way to do it is to just parse the JSON that you get back. So that's using an example of Dataverse, parsing some data that we're getting back, and then putting that into a parse step, generating the schema, outputting it, and then putting it into there, which shows you that. But I did say, this JSON is used across multiple APIs and is extremely, extremely popular because it's such an easy format in terms of generating and representing data. So that's why a lot of the things in the Power Platform use it, a lot of things in Microsoft use it, and a lot of APIs just use it. So it's really easy once you get your head around it to understand what exactly it is. So I think feedback from last time was just a summary of what we were trying to achieve here today. So we've looked at what JSON is. We've talked about where it is used. We talked about how it is structured and how it's written. We've discussed what JSON is in terms of its representation. We've talked about JSON Steamers being a blueprint for a piece of JSON that you're sending to someone so that they know what to accept or what not to accept. And we've kind of shown parse JSON, which is a really useful tool inside of PowerAutomate to take something that we're sending and doesn't really matter what it is, but we know it's going to have that right schema. We're going to then break those bits apart. We've then used it down here to break it apart and use pieces of JSON that were sent back in our request to Dynamics, but wasn't a piece of direct content that we could use, and therefore we've used it to get access to data we didn't previously have. So it's kind of interesting to understand that there may be some times when you're using things in the Power Platform or using APIs where you may not have all the data for whatever reason, but understanding the JSON, getting access to that schema, understanding what those are, give you a lot more power than not doing that. So with that was all I was planning to show tonight and all I was planning to go through. So I hope that was useful. It was fun. Thanks for everyone's input in terms of getting there in the end. Thank you, Reese. See, there's a reason why I always bring people that are smarter than me on the flow surgery with me. Just for when I can't think and I'm on the spot.
Not smarter, just different experience. Next surgery on XML. Do you want to do something on parsing XML?
It's funny you should mention that. So I've been looking a lot at like the XML and JSON functions in PowerAutomate, and looking at the documentation on Microsoft Docs, and it wasn't right. So I've submitted a pull request to Microsoft Docs to get that documentation sorted out, because again, like parsing XML and things like that and using it in JSON, it's not what the website says, it's not what the docs say. So I've tried to do that. But XML's theoretically should be easy enough. I do have a potential upcoming project that is trying to take in XML files and probably parse it in PowerAutomate and then dumping it into Dynamics. So watch this space. We may do that.
I just had a thought of something that would be quite interesting to, as a challenge, would be to actually take a Word document and extract the XML from the Word document that's used for the fields. So I don't know if you're aware, but a Word document, when it's a template for CRM, the actual, when you map the fields, so if you're building out a template with placeholder fields that you use in your Word, mail merge, that's just XML in the document, and a Word document is just a zip file. So if you change the docx to zip, that's an extractable zip file. You can actually change those mappings. So I've done that before for ALM things, because you can't take a template from one environment to another easily. So obviously there's an XRM toolbox for that, tool for that. But I think you could do it in Flow. Might be tricky, but I think you could.
I mean, there is I think a OneDrive command that exports or extracts zip files. So you dump it in OneDrive, convert the extension, extract it, try and get access to the data and do funky stuff. I always just re-download, like re-export the what do we call it? Because like the reason I've dug into the XML before, because someone said to me, oh, if you ever want to add an extra field onto your Word template and you've added it after you've got the Word template, you need to download the new Word template. So I'll just edit the XML and go add the field name. And I'm just there like, edit the XML, add the field. Are you bonkers? And I spent like 20 minutes exporting this thing and extracting it and digging into the XML. I'm just there like, I could just download a new template with all the new fields and copy and paste my old template and whack it in, and I'll be done in 10 seconds. So yeah.
See, I haven't hand cranked the XML like that, like you were saying there. But what I do is I download the template with the mappings I want, and then just copy and paste that XML in the template I've already created. I hate taking existing templates, copying and pasting the actual Word document content, because it never works out right, especially if you have tables and formatting and other things. So I just copy all of the XML from the new template to the existing one.
That's interesting because I've never had an issue in all my times using Word templates, copying and pasting between one and the other. Just always
I'm very picky. It always bugs me. But then it's most of that sort of stuff is working with customer stuff where they've created a template like 5 years ago or on some Word version that isn't the same as mine, and it's just it's always a hassle. So yeah, the XML directly.
Yeah. Any questions from anyone?
Hi, yeah, it's Phil. Just to point out the opening web API thing, that you can do that quite nicely in the level up. There's a nice option in there to just open an existing record in open record in web API. That one halfway down there, and then you get the nice JSON there.
Nice.
Oh, you've got the JSON formatter. Very good.
I do. I didn't like I didn't like just how it used to look.
Yeah, it looks horrible without that.
That's what I want. But that's a good tip. Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, that level up tool is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. You see my new favorite feature as well. The impersonate.
I saw this. I haven't had a chance to play with it. I'd love to know how they're actually doing that. I'm going to be digging into the code soon enough to find out, because that's cool.
Yeah. So I usually have like 2 Chrome profiles, one for like test and one for the real user, which just means I just have an ever-growing list of Chrome profiles. And then when I found this, I was like, no more need for the old one. Just use this. So.
See, I by default create a new profile for every customer I work with. So I've got a very long profile list.
Yeah, but then if you have a test user, I don't like my test user being in the same profile as my main user in case there's issues with caching and things like that. So, I have 2 Chrome profiles per customer sometimes. That's if the customer gives me a test user. They don't always do. So usually they are the test user. So
cool.
Anything else from anyone?